The Wizards will reveal who they are in all the moments between the big games. What makes the Washington Wizards so fun is also their most underrated weakness. They're emotional, sometimes too emotional. They're impulsive, sometimes too impulsive. They're fickle not because they lack determination, but for a contrary reason, they struggle to control their fiery attributes. Because they burn too hot in certain games and moments, the Wizards are susceptible to inconsistency. They're a young and ascending team so desirous of reaching an elite level that they put too much into the so-called big games. It's as if they try to force their way into greatness with resounding performance. Let's call this mindset the statement game complex. We love to talk about statement games in sports, but a season is a labyrinth, and the best teams understand that consistency matters more than making random statements. The Wizards grasp that on a basic level, but they're not versed in applying this mentality. It's entertaining when they get worked up about proving a point. That's why they had the audacity to come to the arena wearing all black last season against Boston, implying that they wanted to bury the Celtics after a series of chippy games. That's why they engaged in a battle of bravado with LeVar Ball last week. That's why they were intent on standing up to Golden State in another wild game last week. The Wizards want their respect. They want the highest possible status. Most teams downplay the notion of a big game, but the Wizards welcome it. They speak the enormity into existence, and if there's any conflict related to the game, they often exacerbate it. The struggling Cavaliers are still the Cavaliers, and the Wizards know it. They're the cure for cliched, one game at a time approaches. It's a great thing for this column, and for anyone in need of a hype man. But for the Wizards to reach their potential, they have to temper their big game mentality. While it's only human to acknowledge that some games are bigger than others, the Wizards' season won't be defined by how they fare against Golden State or Cleveland or Boston or any other high-profile team. Of course, they need to win their fair share of those games. But the best way to be considered in that company is to sustain a high level of play regardless of the opponent. The Wizards must have the mental toughness to play with the same edge against the league's gutter creatures as they do against its upper crust. The eventful first 7 games of this season have served as an important lesson. In 5 of those games, the Wizards have looked like a team capable of making the finals. They have a 4-1 record in those contests, with the only loss occurring because the Warriors rallied from an 18-point deficit to beat them in Oakland. But then there are the losses to the Los Angeles Lakers and Phoenix Suns. The Wizards, 4-3, should be a 6-1 team lamenting that it could be 7-0. Instead, they keep slowing down and allowing the pack to catch up. Even with Markieff Morris recovering from sports hernia surgery, the Wizards were in a good position to showcase their continuity and play from ahead while other teams dealt with chemistry issues caused by roster turnover and struggled to adjust to a new season that started 2 weeks earlier than usual. The Wizards still can get ahead, but they already have 2 bad losses. For us to act like we're somebody, we're not Jackish, not right now, Bradley Beal said. For those unfamiliar with his frustrated athlete diction, Beal used ish as a euphemism for a curse word, although it may have been funnier if he had intended to say the Wizards were worse than something sort of like a jack. After Wednesday's 122-116 loss to Phoenix, Beal said, "There's no excuse. There's no excuse at all." Coach Scott Brooks added, "We have to change the way we approach possessions. You can't just pick and choose possessions." Some call it playing down to the opponent, and certainly, the Wizards have been accused of doing that plenty over the past few years. But it's important to understand the root of this mentality. I don't think the Wizards woke up Wednesday morning and said, "Ugh, we've got the Suns. Let's just play one really good quarter and see if they can catch us." The problem is much more subtle. Wizards start fast, slow down, then fall apart in home loss to Suns, 122-116. Washington had returned home from a West Coast trip in which it went 2-2, could have gone 4-0 and expended major emotional capital against the Lakers and Warriors. The Wizards returned to Capital One Arena on Wednesday to start a stretch of 6 of 7 games at home against the Suns. They knew that, on Friday, LeBron James and Cleveland were coming to town. On Sunday, they traveled to Toronto, another prime contender in the Eastern Conference. Even before the Suns game, the Wizards were amped up to play Cleveland.